Good looks to pull the ladies, okay? That's what this interview is about.
All right. Mexico. So humid here.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I know you from looking at your videos, Dan, and the kind of my audience is more health, but I think, like I was saying to you before, I think if you're going to talk about health, you have to talk about the economy, and you have to talk about the structure of where the health system came from. And you're Dan Dix, you're from Canada, you're an independent journalist, and I've seen that you do some incredible work. So I reckon people should know about you. The more people I think I can expose you to, the better. Maybe some of my audience might know you. So where have you come from? How did you get to this point where you have this obvious passion for wanting to find out what's going on in the world, and then next, I guess, having that step up and that bravery to put yourself in that place of being a conspiracy theorist and just standing in your truth and going, hey, no, stuff you. There's answers. I want to find out what they are, and I don't really give a shit about I guess that attack on me because I'm just striving for truth.
All right. Well, to try to keep a long story somewhat short, this starts back in the late '90s for me. Is when I first, essentially woke up. I was actually given a box full of VHS tapes. And in it were a number of documentary films. There was some Alex Jones films in there. There was a video of David Rappaport interviewing John Rappaport interviewing David Icke. This is the late 90s. And anyways, that stuff really got me, as we say, down the rabbit hole. And
Yeah, what were you doing before then? Like, were you studying? Were you like in a job? Like, what was the Dan Dix prior to the fellow we see now?
That's a good, interesting question that nobody ever asks.
Yeah.
Something a lot of people don't know about me, and this is really interesting, and we can get into it later. Is that I was a child actor.
Wow.
I started acting at the age of 4, and I did it between like 4 and maybe 10 or 11 or so. Over 100 credits. We're talking like actress, SAG, the whole 9 yards. And so I have a bit of a background in film, in the sense that my comfortableness on camera comes from, doing it as a child. And funny enough, there was a time during Sandy Hook that somebody made a documentary claiming that I was a crisis actor who was actually there, and I had to debunk this nonsense. But if this person had actually done a little bit of research, he might have found out that I actually was an actor, and there's a whole background of me acting, and they didn't even get into that in the documentary. So that's kind of a funny story.
Okay. So I'm guessing, like, I don't want to give away your age or anything, but I'm kind of like, for me, I kind of started out training nursing in England and then went into all these different areas and whatnot. You, I think, were awake a bit before me, but where were you going? Were you going along that actor route? So did you have like a normal job
Yeah, so I got out of the acting when I was young. Pretty much when I got into high school, I got into music, and I went to school for music, and then I got a job in music, just record stores and stuff like that. But that led right up until 2001. That's when everything changed, really. It was 9/11. And it was the day after 9/11 that I was at my friend's house, and his girlfriend said something that I had never heard anybody else say yet. It was quite literally the day after, and she says, "You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if these guys did that to themselves." And it kind of hit me, and I was like, gosh, wow, I never really looked at it like that. And then things started to make more and more sense after I started looking at it a little bit differently. So from that moment, I started to get active. 2002, I met up with like-minded people.
So what were you doing? Did you have a job? Like, were you working in what were you doing?
At that time, I was working at a Sunrise record store in downtown Toronto. Yeah. Just a manager of a Sunrise Records, just selling music. Yeah. And then that happened, and I started looking online for people who were thinking like I was. Yeah. And I found a group called the Toronto Truth Seekers way back then, 2002, maybe 2003. And we joined together. We started, handing out Alex Jones films and flyers in the streets, trying to raise awareness. I did that for a number of years until I noticed that there was a lot of kind of infighting that was happening. There was a lot of disagreements, not only about what the real problems are, but also about what the real solutions ought to be. So it was around that time that I noticed it wasn't really going anywhere, and I needed to branch off and just do my own thing, cover the things I want to cover, give out the material I want to give out. And so I came up with the name Press for Truth. In 2006, I went to a Bilderberg conference, was the first thing I ever covered. And I started seeing myself at that, but before that, I was largely an activist. From 2000 till 2006, I was an activist. But in 2006, I brought a camera with me to Bilderberg, and that's when I decided I'm not here as a protester. I'm not here as an activist. I'm here as a videographer, someone who's going to document this historic time and event in time. And it was basically around that time that I knew this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I was like, this is it. This is what feels good. And from 2006 right on up to 2010, 2012, I was banging out, daily videos for Press for Truth, not getting any views, not getting anybody paying attention. It took a long time.
Just quickly, elaborate and in no great detail about Bilderberger, and it's a real friggin' thing, and because I might air this on my local radio station as well, and there'll be a lot of people who've never heard of that. Just a very quick, what is Bilderberger?
Well, Bilderberg is it's a group. It's a group of people, roughly around 120 on average of them. It started in 1954. It's really made up of politicians and bankers and military men, media moguls, royalty, very highly powerful and influential people within our society. And what they do is they meet once a year for about a week, either in North America or Europe. And they discuss things off the record. And it's only recently, since the days of some of the people who started uncovering what they've been doing, and I've kind of followed, taken up the torch from those guys from the back in the day who used to do it. And it's only now that they are publicly admitting that they are doing these meetings. So really, Bilderberg is just kind of like people see, for example, what's going on with the WEF in Davos, Switzerland. Bilderberg is something similar, just a very tight-knit group who meets every year and kind of decides the fate of the world.
So if I were to say that and we know the names that go there, Prince Charles and, like some well-known names. So this is easily for anybody to find out. But if I were to say you got a group of people sitting behind closed doors making plans, a conspiracy is two or more people conspiring. Mm-hmm. So it is a genuine conspiracy. There's no theory. That's a conspiracy because we don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about plans to change the world. Mm-hmm. So, and for me, this is why I like talking about this stuff, because, you get this label, conspiracy theorist. Well, to my mind, if you're not, you've got to be an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about this. If there was 120 actors and musicians and NBA basketball stars and people like that meeting in secret behind closed doors once a year, everybody's going to want to know, what are these guys talking about? What are they meeting about? Why are they getting together? But the reason why nobody's asking these questions with these kind of organizations is highly because the media is completely bought out and paid for by them. So this is why you don't get any reporting on these things. And so we're trying to break that kind of mold and expose groups like Bilderberg to the world.
So somebody's a little bit rhetorical, but I want you to kind of lead with this. So are you suggesting that these people who have probably stocks, shares, bonds of these medical companies, they got massive interest in the global media companies, are you suggesting that there is almost a them and an us, and some of their decisions, let's say it's even accidental or malicious, that implies intent? And I don't think we have to. I mean, I can certainly give you an idea what I think of as intent, but are you suggesting that the results or the outcomes of those meetings can have very negative effects for humanity?
Well, absolutely. We've actually seen it. We've uncovered this from leaked minutes of the meetings before, where they've discussed things like the Iraq War, for example. Going into Iraq was discussed in 2000. Like a couple of years before it actually happened, or sorry, maybe 2002 was discussed, and then happened a year later. Or the European Union was kind of the brainchild of guys like this at Bilderberg. So yes, we do find that a lot of these things that these guys are discussing ends up happening later down in life. Now, you mentioned, understanding government and how the health system and the banking and all of it ties together. And if you look back at history, it was just shortly after the Second World War, where you had companies like IG Farben of Germany, Rockefeller Pharmaceuticals here, linking up essentially and creating a cartel or a cabal, which was really about taking over the health and wellness industry. And this is what we're seeing bleed into today's COVID 1984 nightmare, because it's the same people who are at the helms of control. And that's why, as you said, if you want to understand how you're being under medical tyranny, you have to understand how these banking cartels and these inside governmental operators have all been colluding and working together. And once you see how those things connect, you can really understand how they're able to exert so much control over our lives today.
Yeah, nice summary. And one of the things that I talk about is the importance of the Flexno report. And essentially, people just don't understand that those entities, they came from earlier, but the big push started in around that 1910 to 1913 time, and they own the curriculum. They teach doctors. These are essentially the drug pushers teaching everything about health. And as you're kind of pointing out to, it kind of started getting pointy after the World War. And so what do you see having? What's the effect of that you've seen, and even before this disaster that we're seeing in the last 2 or 3 years, and which we can actually get to, but even before that, what were you seeing happening?
Well, even before that, what we saw was a slow takeover of this pharmaceutical industries, and what they ended up doing was in putting one of their guys on the boards of all of these different companies that had influence. And not only that, but the universities that were teaching doctors, the doctors of the future. And what you started to seeing is they were moving off of natural health-based remedies, and they started moving into petroleum-based pharmaceutical remedies. And these doctors had a complete change in the indoctrination, I guess you could call it now. So that was a major shift that happened.
So with all due respect, you're not a doctor. So how can you tell people about that system, because you're not an expert? I'm adding a fair bit of facetiousism. I don't know if that's a word even there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm definitely not a doctor. I'm not an expert. Myself personally, in my case, I've interviewed a lot of doctors and a lot of experts. And so, a lot of what I'm saying is not even coming necessarily from me. This is what I've learned from the experts. So, as I always encourage people, to do their own due diligence and to really fact check everything, do the same with myself. But, with the history of big pharma, for example, I learned a lot about that from G. Edward Griffin. And I did an interview with him called The History of the Pharmaceutical Industry and How It Ties into COVID 1984, or something like that. And he really laid out that history of how the Germans and the Americans teamed up to infiltrate and take over and monopolize the entire health industry. So again, in my personal experience, I've been blessed enough and lucky enough to sit down with these doctors, nurses, experts, scientists, and get their perspective on it. And thankfully, I've managed to remember a lot of it.
Yeah, I like that, because that's and I like trying to throw the obvious stuff in front of people. So essentially, because you don't have that flashy screen behind you, the CNN brand or whatever, people are just sitting back like these nodding dogs, looking at the doctor on the TV, and they believe every word. So essentially, you've done exactly the same thing, except you've done that with people who don't maybe have a financial bias. In other words, the drug company's not paying their friggin' bills by getting them on. And everybody should know that the people that we're seeing on the television, the doctors and nurses, if they're saying something opposite to the pharmaceutical companies that sponsor the channels, they are not going to get airtime.
Right. That's a good point. And on top of that, absolutely nobody is paying me. And, things would potentially be compromised. I mean, I've had sponsorships before that I would only deal with if it's something I truly believe in. So for example, right now I have one that deals in gold and silver, but I truly believe in gold and silver. But there was another time that there was somebody who wanted to offer me a pretty significant amount of money, but it was to push this Beyond Meat. It wasn't that specific company. But it was one just like them. And I just absolutely was not comfortable getting my name and getting behind that. So, I've, managed to stay true to, not being, tempted or corrupted by any kind of money, and just continuing to provide the information that I think my audience needs and that I think they want as well.
Yeah, I like that. And I've always, the theme that I've got from yourself when I've been looking at your stuff is this: there is a bit of a feeling of a lot of integrity behind what you do, and I think there's that much infighting and division between all these sorts of different groups. So that's why I'm really fascinated being here and actually meeting people in the flesh and seeing, you seem like your presence on camera, which is fantastic. Right. Which kind of, I guess, leads me towards this importance of standing in your truth. And obviously that's kind of something that drives me. I'm speaking, I used to work in the belly of the system. Now I'm quite militant in telling people that most of that stuff that I learned is wrong. Right. And I don't say that because I'm just making it up. I'm saying that because of listening to research from people left, right and center. What if there's people, on that cusp, and a part of why we're both doing this, I guess, is try and shake people just from that stupor. What would you say to people who are thinking, maybe I should do something, maybe I don't, just getting them up and getting them more active?
You know what, I would say if you're on that cusp, if you're on the fence and you're not sure if you can pull it off, if one person can make a difference, absolutely you can. And I would say dive in head first and just start doing it. That's exactly what I did. I didn't know what I was doing when I started doing all of this. I kind of fumbled along. I learned everything along the way, and it wasn't easy. It's that whole kind of fake it till you make it sort of thing. And that's just kind of what it takes. That's what you got to do. And these days, there's not too many excuses of why you shouldn't be able to do this. I mean, we have the technology quite literally in our fingertips today. Yeah. What used to take millions of dollars and editing vans and satellite dishes and stuff, we can now do as well and reach millions of people with the power of the technology that we have today, which is a double-edged sword. Websites are relatively cheap, sometimes free to make. Channels like BitChute and Odyssey are free to create. There's really no excuse at this stage of the game, financially or whatever, to get involved. So I would just say, start doing it, and you'll start to figure out what works best for you as you go along. But you just got to dive in head first and start doing it.
So what we're talking about, I guess, is maybe manning up and just having a little bit of bravery. And you know where I'm going with this, because I told you I'm going to ask you about this before. But I've seen a few videos, a couple in particular, where you just kind of get in the middle of this melee. And I mean, I've expected maybe that you're kind of like 6'5", whatever. You're just a normal kind of guy, normal kind of stature, whatever. And you just kind of, in the middle of this mix, just throwing your questions. These people are kind of like, it was an intimidating situation, that at least one of them I saw. Can you tell me about one of those situations? The adrenaline's got to have been up anyway. Why did you get into that situation, and what happened there?
I'm surrounded by hundreds of people who think I'm a racist. Guys, please share this stream. This is crazy.
And when I would try to defend myself against such an outrageous accusation, the police would tell me to stop, as if I was instigating things.
You don't know me.
Okay,
so what if...
Stop it.
They're calling me a racist and a Nazi.
Just stop. Okay, but just stop.
The officer then began to strategize with me about how to get me out of harm's way.
So how best can we get you out of here?
I don't know, man. Guys, again, if you're just tuning in, I'm completely surrounded by hundreds of people right now.
How best can we get you out of here? How did you get here today?
Can we just walk? Are they all going to follow us or what? I don't know. The officer's trying to figure out how to get me out of here safely, because there's hundreds and hundreds of people surrounding me right now.
And while all this is going on, some protesters were making up total lies about me in order to fit their narrative that I'm a racist white supremacist.
Did you hear what she just said?
No, what'd she say?
She said you're walking around saying that black people ain't shit.
As things continued to escalate, a documentary filmmaker stepped in and asked me, "How does this make you feel?"
Not good. I mean, it's kind of nerve-wracking, and when you have these many cases claiming that you're a racist, it's not a very good feeling, I obviously am not. I don't have a single racist bone in my body. If these people really knew me, they would get that, but they don't know who I am. And it's quite sad to see the group descend into this.
The police then made the decision to drag me to another location, and that's when I was physically assaulted with a bottle to the head as protesters cheered on in excitement at the fact that I was in pain.
Follow him. Let's go. Let's go.
All right, being escorted out now.
Settle down.
From the left, I was attacked with a bottle, and from the right, someone smashed my camera rig, sending my phone and GoPro flying.
All right, being escorted out now.
Settle down.
Once the police had moved me closer to their vehicles, one officer told me to stop filming. And since I was just physically assaulted, I wasn't willing to do that, especially because I'm in a public space. And for that, I was arrested.
Let's go.
Where's my GoPro? Yo, my GoPro,
I don't care.
dude. Okay, yo, what are you doing?
I'm moving you so
Yeah,
that
no
we can
shit.
do this quickly.
Dude, they just knocked my GoPro off. That's an $800 camera. Why are you pushing me?
Why am I pushing you? Because
Yes.
I'm trying to save your life. Are you with them or not?
All right, guys.
Put the cameras down, guys. I'm telling you right now, turn the cameras off.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yes, I can, because
Excuse me?
you're under arrest right now.
Why am I under arrest?
The stream cut right as the officer was grabbing my wrist. Another officer was twisting my arm behind my back as they forcefully put me in handcuffs and threw me in the back of their paddy wagon. They took me down to the police station, and after about an hour of sitting with my hands cuffed behind my back in a cramped up police van, they opened the door and they informed me that I was being charged with disturbing the peace and assault. I was then read my rights and asked if I want to call a lawyer, to which I said, no, I don't need to, because I've done nothing wrong. About 3 hours later, they opened up the door to the cell and said, okay, you're free to go. This is an unbelievable display of mob mentality and how groupthink can steer a group of people into a very dangerous direction. And
Okay, well, I've been in a number of them, so
Yeah.
I think I probably know which one you're talking about. There was a time not long ago that I was at a BLM rally, a Black Lives
That's the
Matter
one, yeah.
rally. So this actually started a week before this incident, just to take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was at this smaller Black Lives Matter rally, and I was just live streaming it, documenting it. This is interesting, happening right in my town, my backyard. So yeah, let's go film it, see what it's all about. And all of a sudden, about 6 or 7 girls with black masks, Antifa girls, started surrounding me and screaming, white supremacists, racist white supremacists, go home. And I'm like, what? You're talking to me? Like, what's this all about? And so I'm asking them, like, why do you think I'm this white supremacist? Like, what is this coming from? None of them had an answer. And anyways, that was that. I thought that was a little bizarre. I walked away from that. About a week or two later, they had another BLM rally, this one much bigger. So I went to this one, I'm walking around, I'm documenting it, and a couple girls again come up to me and they have me on video from that last rally of people calling me a white supremacist. And they say, is that you on camera? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they said, these people are all saying you're a white supremacist. And then all of a sudden, other people heard this, and very quickly they all started surrounding me. And this group grew from 10 to 20 to 50 to about 120 people or so. It was a huge mob of people who all of a sudden surrounded me and wanted my blood. So
And you were on your own, weren't you? Was there anybody with you? Or,
there was a couple of guys who came over to my aid immediately. So there was a few people, friends of mine, who were in the area, and as soon as they saw that it was looking like I was in trouble, they came to my aid. And so did the police. So all of a sudden, I was surrounded by a small circle of about 6 or 7 police officers who created a protective little circle around me to protect me from this mob of about 120 people who were shouting things and being very aggressive and angry. And it culminated into all of a sudden myself getting assaulted and attacked. They hit me in the head with a bottle. And at that moment, they took my GoPro and they hit me in the head with a bottle, and the police officer grabbed me to get me out of harm's way, and he says, "You're under arrest."
I remember this. That's why. It sticks out. I was just shocked that you were getting attacked and you were the problem.
Right. So I'm under arrest. So as he's dragging me away, I say, "What are you arresting me for? Like, these are the crazy." And he said, "I'm arresting you for your protection." So what the police decided to do in that moment was to create they felt it was a smart idea, they thought, to create a ruse in order to protect me, to arrest me in order to get me into out of harm's way and into a police van where I wouldn't be harmed. The problem with their idea and their thinking there is this justified in the minds of this mob that I must be this thing that they are claiming that I am because the police just arrested me and put me in the paddy wagon. Not only that, the Vancouver Sun, I think they are called, wrote an article in the mainstream media saying that I was arrested by the VPD and that I was the instigator of this incident. All of it is untrue. I had a 3-hour live stream that shows everything that happened leading up to that moment. So that one was pretty wild. I have lots of people have said I should be suing the Vancouver Police Department, but when you do that, it doesn't really come out of their pockets. It will essentially, in the long run, come out of the taxpayers' pockets. So it's really not something I'm interested in engaging in. But
it's more that energy as well. I mean, that you're in a rigged system. So jumping through your hurdles, paying lawyers, whatever, you might even have a successful case. And do you want to expend that energy when we got other stuff to do as well?
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather focus on, getting back, boots on the ground, get back to doing the thing that I always do. So that was one of those rather intense situations, which my mom worries about me when I go into those.
So to wrap this up, essentially, you're doing a previous video. Somebody accuses you of something you're not on a previous video. Mm-hmm. Somebody else uses that footage with somebody saying he's a white supremacist as evidence, mm-hmm. and you get surrounded by a friggin' mob.
Yes.
And it just baffled, like.
And the mob mentality that kicked in happened so quickly,
But how easy was that to put together? I'm just stunned by the ease and the innocuousness of how that just came about.
It was really one or two people.
Yeah.
It was that original girl. It was just one girl who said, "He's a racist white supremacist," and then 6 other girls surrounded me and started filming. And really, that all stemmed from one person. And of course, they're masked. We'll never know who these people are. And
then it leads me to think of segueing, and this is relevant as well to health, I think, because once you know how poisonous the mainstream media are, you can have your radar up and be questioning everything. So and obviously you're aware of all that stuff with BLM and all these different cities. These guys were rioting, looting, causing destruction fires, you name it. And then you have the comparison of you had some activity nowhere close to some of this stuff going on with BLM on January 6th, and they call it a friggin' insurrection, and there's people rotting in jail still from that. And I've seen videos of these people peacefully marching through. Of course, there were skirmishes, but nothing even close to this BLM stuff. I mean, that just appalls me. It makes me angry. What are you? I mean, that's got to piss you off as well.
Sure, I'm honestly still shocked and surprised that anybody's even talking about this January 6th thing stuff. Like in the U.S., there's still cases going on. There inquiries. It's all the news pundits are still bringing it up. Yeah. When really it was pretty much a nothing burger. It was something that was allowed to happen essentially.
I think even a nothing burger trivialized it because. And I think it was a bit of a setup as well, but I just can't see that people can buy the tiny snippets of a skirmish here in a headline that one person died and was shot, when every single friggin' day we've got this Mariupol or Donbass in the Ukraine. We got these atrocities, Syria, hundreds of thousands of people dying, and we're getting the mainstream media compare January 6th to September 11, I just find myself almost speechless.
Yeah, I mean, that's I didn't know they were comparing it to 9/11. Yeah. I mean, taking it that far is like, wow. This is just another reason why you need to turn your TVs off, why you need to stop, paying attention to these blatant lies. I mean, maybe that's one of the good things, I suppose we could say, that came out of this COVID 1984 nightmare, is I think a lot of people started to recognize that, hey, wait a minute, if they're lying about some of these things, and if what they're telling me isn't true, what else has been going on in my life that they have control over? So the positive I would take away from all of that is that we're in a moment now where a lot of people are questioning the nature of the reality they're in, and they're starting to point the finger at the real enemy, which is, the state that rules over them. So it's an exciting time.
I think you're right, and for me, there has to be some kind of hypnosis, because people ignore the obvious, and that's why I'm in particular a pain in the ass, because I've had that tenure with my mainstream health background, and for me, the one big trigger for me was the masks, and I found that I had to shoot that down very quickly. You'd have people come up to me, "Where's your mask?" And I've kind of learned really quickly a nice way to get to that, and I would just answer back, "What about your eyes?" Mm-hmm. And then people go, "Huh? What do you mean?" And I go, "Because you know how you can catch viruses. That's if we believe that viruses exist the way we're told." And people say, "Well, you breathe them in, yeah, but you also get them through your eyes. Yeah. So how is this protecting you? And why should I do something that's..." And when I was doing my training in England, there was groups of surgeons at the time, and this is in the mid-90s, who didn't wear masks in surgeries because there was compelling evidence from 3 different studies that your outcome after surgery, when you didn't wear a mask, your outcome was the same. Okay, so even the loose association that masks prevent droplets and droplets cause infection data, even that's tenuous. So this whole narrative that these pieces of dirty, wet shit on your face can protect you from something is outrageous.
It's beyond insane. I mean, if we do want to talk about, this being some sort of viruses that is going to infect people, well, most people realize the holes in the mask are a lot bigger than anything that could get through there. And just there's like a cognitive dissonance that goes on in the minds of the people who are doing this. One time me and my wife were trying to enter a restaurant, and the guy says, you have to put on a mask to go to your table. Once you sit down, it's fine. You can take it off once you sit down. And it wasn't a far distance. We're talking 6-7 foot walk to get to where everybody else is sitting down. And so I had to call him out on it. And I used this analogy. I said, you do realize that that's similar to having a peeing section in a pool. And he just said, "I'm not here to argue with you." And I said,
"That's the cop out, isn't it?"
I said, "This isn't an argument. I'm just trying to show you the absurdity of what you're trying to get me to do here." Yeah. And he just said, "You're going to have to leave." And so we ended up just boycotting those companies that do that, restaurants, businesses, and the ones that we do find who are on the side of freedom, not checking the passports, not mandatory masking, anybody like that. We like to tip those people large.
Awesome, and it seems to be that the last 3 years, it's been an intelligence test. I mean, I know I'm working in this in health, and I got a bit of a background and a bit of knowledge about that stuff, but it's beggars belief that some of this ridiculous stuff people can actually even consider doing in any way. What's going on with that?
Well, from what I can tell, because in private businesses in the same area of town, some of them will be completely free and some of them will be completely tyrannical. And I really think it comes down to which owner is watching too much television. And it's the guys who are glued to the TV 24/7 who are the ones who are just bending over and doing whatever they're told to do, no matter what, without question. It's largely coming, obviously, not just from the media, but there's all sorts of programming coming through the TV shows, the commercials. I got rid of my TV maybe 17 years ago and canceled cable. So I'm glad to have rid myself of that. But just by looking around and seeing the amount of people eating this up, wearing the mask, getting the vaccines, I think a lot of it's coming from how much TV people watch.
I noticed that as well. It just seems clear. I got rid of my television later than you, unfortunately, but still in about the last 7 years or so. And it seems a clear divide. The television watchers, you can't break the spell. The ones without television are open to suggestion.
Yeah, and it really is a spell. Yeah. I mean, it's an addiction. If I had one in my home, I might turn it on, and then all of a sudden you kind of get sucked in, and it's like, oh, that show seems neat, and before you know it, 4, 5, 6 hours have gone by, and that's just probably by design. And from what I understand, there are flicker rates that put you into a more of a kind of a docile sort of state where you're susceptible to programming, essentially. And from what I understand, when you first see a television, it takes a little bit of time for your brain to get into those sort of waves that they want you to be in. But the second time you watch TV, it's less than a second and you're already in that state.
And you're exactly right. And I've seen the actual patent numbers, and I've put the patent numbers into Google from anything from the 80s on that spell that out. They talk about brainwave changes and being susceptible to advertising. And I can only take it a little bit further. If they're first of all getting you susceptible to advertising, what else are they telling you? If they want to make you believe in a pandemic, for example, might they be putting that through?
Well, you know, like the guy who's running this conference that we're at always says, you know, they call it television programming for a reason, because that's exactly what it's doing. You know, it's programming us. And like I said, in this post-COVID 1984 world, as I often call it, and I do believe we're in a pre-COVID, post-COVID kind of world, more and more people are starting to realize what's going on, I think.
I reckon that you got some awesome stuff, some awesome information. We all deserve to have abundance, financial abundance. So please tell whoever's going to listen to this about you, where they can find your stuff, how they can help you out, how they can support you. I don't give a shit if you say, give me, ask for money, whatever. We honestly, we're in a fight, and we need to get these things happening. So say what you need, man.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. The best place to go right now, I would say, is the website, pressfortruth.ca. Because I've recently been kicked off of YouTube. I might be getting kicked off of other platforms, who knows. I've kind of diversified my video sharing platform into a number of platforms. I'm on BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, Minds, Bastion. I think I'm on about 7 or 8 different platforms. But as I said, the best way to reach me and to stay up to date with my content is pressfortruth.ca. And then beyond that, if anybody is ever interested in financially contributing to my efforts, it's obviously greatly appreciated. Right there at pressfortruth.ca, I have a donate page, and there's a number of options, whether it's cryptocurrencies or wire transfer, or simply just words of encouragement sent to my P.O. box. You know, I love getting letters from people as well. So that's all available at pressfortruth.ca.
Mate, fantastic. Really like talking to you. Honoured to meet somebody who's just carrying that flag, and thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I feel like we could have talked for...
easily. I'm aware that you're time pressed. We've got a really important conference that we've got to see, so I've got I don't have a watch on, but yeah, man, really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Okay, I'll pack up. Thanks, man. That was great.
No problem.
That was great.
Yeah, sure.